Picture this. The year is 62 of the Common Era. You are 14 years old. Tomorrow, you will marry a man you have met exactly twice. He is 35. Your father arranged everything 6 months ago over wine and contracts. But tomorrow is not what you are thinking about right now. Tonight is different. Tonight is the ceremony your mother will not explain. The one your older sister still will not talk about 3 years after her own wedding. The one that makes the household slaves look away when you ask questions. You are about to discover why every Roman bride learned to dread this particular night more than the wedding itself. This was not written in the history books you studied in school, but it was carved into wedding contracts, referenced in medical texts, and whispered about in letters between Roman women that survived 2,000 years. The evidence was always there. Historians just chose not to connect the dots. Until now. If you believe that the documented records of history's most disturbing rituals must be remembered, consider liking this video and subscribing. Your support helps uncover more accounts from the corners of Roman history they hoped we would forget. The ceremony begins at sunset. You are led to a special chamber in your family's villa, not your bedroom, not the public areas where wedding preparations are happening. A smaller room, windowless, lit by oil lamps that cast shadows that seem to move on their own. 3 older women are waiting. Not your mother, not your aunts. Women you do not know. Their faces are professional masks. They have done this hundreds of times. They do not introduce themselves. They do not explain. They simply begin. Here is what makes this especially sinister. This ceremony had a name. The Romans called it the Domina Noctis, the Night of Dominion. Modern scholars translated it as Night of Preparation. Both translations are accurate. Both are incomplete, because what happened in that room was not just preparation for marriage. It was systematic conditioning for an entire social structure built on female submission. And Rome did not just practice it. They perfected it into a science. Think about what this tells us. The Roman Empire lasted over 1,000 years. They conquered 3 continents. They built roads and aqueducts that still function today. They created legal systems that shape modern law. And they applied that same engineering precision to breaking the will of 14-year-old girls the night before their weddings. The first woman approaches you. She is carrying something. In the lamplight, you cannot quite see what it is. She speaks for the first time. Her voice is flat, professional. Remove your stola. You hesitate. You have never undressed in front of strangers. In Rome, even in the bathhouses, young unmarried women maintain modesty. Your mother taught you this. Your tutors reinforced it. The woman does not repeat herself. She simply waits. The silence in the room becomes unbearable. You remove your stola. Here is where the historical evidence gets chilling. We know the details of this ceremony from 3 sources. First, fragments of a medical text by Soranus of Ephesus, written around 100 Anno Domini. Second, letters between upper-class Roman women found in archaeological excavations near Pompeii in 1982. Third, legal contracts that specified the completion of preparations as a requirement before marriage could be consummated. When you piece these sources together, the full picture emerges. And it is worse than you imagine. The women begin what they call instruction. That is the word used in Soranus's text. Instructio sponsae, instruction of the bride. But instruction implies teaching, This is not teaching. This is something else entirely. They position you. They touch you. They explain in clinical, detached voices exactly what will happen tomorrow night. Not theoretically, not abstractly. They demonstrate. You are 14 years old. You have been sheltered your entire life. The only thing you know about what happens between husbands and wives is that it exists. Now these strangers are showing you, in detail, with their hands. Think about the psychology. You cannot refuse. This is part of the marriage contract. Your father paid for this service. The women performing it are professionals, paid by families across Rome to ensure brides are properly prepared. If you resist, they will report to your father that you are uncooperative. In Rome, that is grounds for canceling the marriage. Your father would lose his business alliance. Your family would lose face. You have no power, no choice, no escape, so you endure. Endures. Here is what most people do not understand about Roman marriage. The average age for girls was 12 to 15. For men, it was 25 to 40. These were not love matches. They were business transactions between fathers. The groom's family wanted to ensure their investment, the dowry, the alliance, the legitimate heirs, would pay off. They needed a wife who would submit without resistance, who would not refuse her husband, who understood exactly what was expected. The dominatus ceremony solved that problem efficiently, brutally, systematically. One of the women is explaining the positions. She is using a wooden model. Archaeologists found several of these in Pompeii, carved from olive wood, about 8 inches long. For decades, scholars classified them as religious artifacts. They were wrong. These were teaching tools, visual aids for the ceremony. The woman demonstrates each position. She explains which ones your husband will expect, which ones Roman men prefer, which ones are proper for a wife versus which ones are reserved for slaves and prostitutes. You are learning that even in intimacy, there are rules, hierarchies, ways a wife must behave differently from other women. You are learning that your body is not yours anymore. It is your husband's property. The ceremony is simply the transfer of the instruction manual. The second woman approaches. She is carrying a small clay vessel. Inside is a mixture of olive oil, honey, and something else that smells like herbs. She explains that this must be applied for ease of transition. Those are the words she uses. She applies it herself. You are not allowed to do it. She must verify that you understand where and how. This moment, this specific moment, appears in multiple historical sources. Soranus mentions it as medical necessity. The letters from Pompeii reference it with euphemisms like the anointing. The marriage contracts specify that ritual preparation with sacred oils must be completed. Sacred. They called it sacred. Think about what that word does. It transforms violation into religious duty. It makes resistance into sacrilege. It ensures you cannot object without offending the gods themselves. The Romans were masters of this technique. They took systematic abuse and wrapped it in ritual and tradition and divine mandate. They made it sacred so you could not fight it. The third woman has been silent until now. She is older than the others. Her face shows no emotion whatsoever. She produces a small brass instrument. It looks medical, clinical. It is approximately the size and shape of you understand immediately what it is for. Here is what makes this especially disturbing. This was not improvised. This was procedure. These women were trained. They belonged to a professional guild. The muliers preparatrices, women preparers. They had standards, techniques, quality control. Rome industrialized this. They turned the systematic conditioning of young brides into a regulated profession with training protocols and fee structures. In the wedding contracts that survive, the cost for a full Domina Noctis ceremony ranged from 50 to 200 denarii, depending on the family's social class. For context, a Roman soldier earned 225 denarii per year. Families paid almost a year's military salary to have strangers systematically condition their 14-year-old daughters. The older woman explains what she is about to do. She uses the word examination. She says it is to ensure you are intact and suitable. This is the virginity verification, documented in Soranus's medical texts, referenced in Roman legal codes, required by marriage contracts. But it is not just verification, it is demonstration. She is showing you, making you feel that your body is now subject to inspection, to invasion, to approval or rejection by others. You are learning the fundamental lesson of Roman wifehood. You have no physical privacy, no bodily autonomy. Your husband, his family, even hired professionals have rights to your body that supersede your own. The examination is not gentle. Soranus himself notes that many young women experience tears and bleeding during this process. He recommends the honey oil mixture to ease the trauma. Trauma, he uses that word, and then continues describing the procedure as if trauma is just an expected side effect. You are crying now. You cannot help it. The women do not comfort you. One of them notes it in her record. One of them notes it in her record. Lacrimatio normalis, normal tears. She has seen this 1,000 times. Here is what should truly disturb you. This ceremony was not hidden. It was not secret. Every Roman family knew about it. Upper-class mothers had experienced it. Fathers paid for it. Grooms expected it. It was normal, traditional. Proper preparation for marriage. The ceremony ends after approximately 2 hours. The 3 women gather their instruments. The older one produces a wax tablet and makes notations. She will deliver this report to your father and to your future husband's family tomorrow before the wedding. The report confirms you are intact, instructed, and prepared. Intact, verified virgin, instructed, knows what is expected, prepared, conditioned to submit. You are given a simple white tunica to wear. The women leave without another word. You are alone in the windowless room, sitting on the stone bench, trying to process what just happened. Tomorrow, you will wear white and flowers and smile at the guests. You will speak the ritual words. Everyone will celebrate. But tonight, in this room, you learned what Roman marriage actually means. If this moment in history does not move you to learn more, you might be missing the lesson our ancestors died to teach. The machinery of systematic oppression does not announce itself with horns and manifestos. It dresses itself in tradition and ritual and calls itself sacred. Now we have to confront the truly sinister part. This was not the only night. The ceremony had a second phase, and it happened after the wedding. The first 3 nights of a Roman marriage were governed by ritual, as specific as the Domina Noctis ceremony. They were called the Tres Noctes Dominationis, the 3 nights of dominion. Here is what the historical sources reveal. The new husband was expected to, required to, according to Roman masculine ideals, establish complete physical dominance during these 3 nights. Soranus provides medical advice for treating the resulting injuries. Roman physicians had standard protocols for this. Standard protocols. Because it happened to virtually every Roman bride. Letters between women reference these 3 nights with phrases like the ordeal of dominion and the establishing of authority. One letter, found in a villa outside Rome in 1993, was from a mother to her recently married daughter. It reads, "You have survived the 3 nights. The worst is over. Now you can begin to learn numbness. Learn numbness." Read that again. This was not about intimacy or affection or even producing heirs. Those would come later. The 3 nights served a specific purpose. Break her physically and psychologically so she understands her place in the household hierarchy. The bride you were yesterday, the 14-year-old girl with opinions and preferences, needed to be destroyed. The wife you will be tomorrow must be compliant, submissive, and above all, broken of any expectation of bodily autonomy. Think about the precision of this system. The Domina Noctis ceremony prepared you mentally, showed you what to expect, removed the element of surprise that might trigger resistance. Then the 3 nights of dominion established the physical reality, your husband's absolute right to your body, your complete lack of power to refuse. By the 4th day, you are a Roman wife, properly trained, appropriately submissive, ready to produce legitimate heirs and manage the household, and never, ever resist your husband's demands. Here is where it gets worse. If a bride did resist, if she fought back during the ceremony or the 3 nights, Roman law had provisions. The husband could return her to her father as defective merchandise. The dowry would be forfeit. The business alliance dissolved. But the girl? She was unmarriageable now. Damaged was the legal term. Her father could sell her to a brothel to recoup the financial loss. That is documented in Roman legal codes. So resistance meant potential sexual slavery for the rest of your life. The system was designed to be inescapable. Every exit led to something worse. One of the most chilling pieces of evidence comes from the ruins of Herculaneum, destroyed by Vesuvius in 79 Anno Domini, alongside Pompeii. Archaeologists excavating a villa in 2008 found a small room in the basement. Stone walls, no windows, a single stone bench. Scratched into the wall, barely visible, were dozens of marks, tally marks, counted in groups of 5. Someone had counted days in that room. The marks totaled 1,642 days, 4.5 years. Next to the marks, scratched in crude letters, Mater adiuva me mother, help me. The room was directly beneath the villa's master bedroom. The archaeologists found evidence of a bolt on the outside of the door. Here's what that tells us. Some women did not become numb. Some did not submit. And when they resisted, they were simply locked away, kept in the basement, brought up when the husband wanted to assert his rights, returned to the darkness afterward. The villa belonged to a senator, a respected member of Roman society. He kept his wife in a basement cell for over 4 years, and no one stopped him, because legally, she was his property. This was not madness. This was not aberration. This was Roman marriage taken to its logical conclusion. Now we have to ask the question that keeps me awake at night. How many women, how many young girls went through the Domina Noctis ceremony? How many endured the 3 nights of dominion? Conservative estimates based on marriage rates in Rome during the Empire period. Approximately 200,000 to 300,000 per year across Roman territories. For 1,000 years. Think about that number. 200 to 300 million women. Each one systematically conditioned and broken, and forced to accept violation as their legal duty. This was the largest systematic campaign of conditioning in ancient history. And it was hiding in plain sight. Marriage, family, tradition. Here is what makes this story especially relevant. The Domina Noctis ceremony officially ended in the 4th century Anno Domini, when Christianity became Rome's dominant religion. Christian writers condemned it as pagan barbarism, but read the fine print. They did not condemn the purpose of preparing brides for submissive wifehood. They condemned the method of professional women conducting the ceremony. The solution? Move the instruction to the wedding night itself. Let the husband be the instructor. Cut out the middleman. Same goal, same systematic breaking of resistance, just more efficient. And if you think that sounds familiar, if you recognize echoes of this in medieval Europe, in colonial America, in wedding night traditions that persisted into the 20th century, you are starting to understand the pattern. The Domina Noctis ceremony ended. The underlying system never did. It just evolved, adapted, found new language and new justifications. A wife's duty, conjugal rights, submit to your husband. These are not ancient phrases. They are legal language that persisted in Western law until the 1970s. In 1970, not one single United States state recognized marital assault as a crime. The idea that a husband needed consent from his wife was legally absurd. She had given permanent consent by saying "I do." That only changed 50 years ago. One human lifetime. The ceremony Rome created did not disappear. It just stopped having a name. Let me show you one final piece of evidence. In 2019, archaeologists excavating beneath a medieval church in Rome found a sealed chamber. Inside were hundreds of small brass instruments, the same type used in Domina Noctis ceremonies. Carbon dating showed they were manufactured continuously from 100 before Christ to 1200 of the Common Era. That is 1,300 years of continuous production. Hundreds of thousands of instruments, each one representing dozens or hundreds of young women. The church was built in the 5th century, after Christianity had officially ended the pagan ceremony. Someone had collected all these instruments and sealed them in a chamber beneath the church. But they did not destroy them, they preserved them. Hidden, yes, but preserved. Ask yourself why. Why go through the effort of collecting and hiding, rather than simply melting down the brass? Here is what I think. Someone wanted evidence to survive. Someone wanted future generations to know what happened. What was done to millions of women in the name of tradition, marriage, and social order. Someone scratched "Remember Us" in Latin on the sealed chamber door. So here we are, 2,000 years later, remembering. The women who endured the Domina Noctis ceremony left almost no written records. They could not. Most Roman women were illiterate. Even upper-class women who could write knew their letters might be read by fathers or husbands, but they left other evidence in the tally marks in the basement, the prayers scratched into walls, the brass instruments buried beneath churches, the medical texts documenting their treatment. They left a trail, hoping someone would eventually follow it, hoping someone would eventually tell their story. Here is what haunts me about this history. The 3 women who conducted the ceremonies, the muliers, preparatrices, they had all been through it themselves. Every single one had been a 14-year-old bride once. They knew exactly what they were doing. They knew the trauma. They had experienced it. And then they became the ones inflicting it. That is the most insidious part of systematic oppression. It does not just create victims. It creates a class of victims who survive by becoming perpetrators. Women enforcing patriarchy. Slaves punishing other slaves. The oppressed policing each other so the oppressors do not have to. Rome perfected this technique. They made women the enforcers of their own subjugation. The ceremony was more traumatic because it was performed by women, because it carried the implicit message. Even other women think this is necessary. Even they agree you need to be broken. If this exposed something you have never heard before, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we are going to keep uncovering the history they tried to erase. Drop a comment with your thoughts, and I will see you in the next investigation. The Domina Noctis ceremony was officially abolished in 380 Anno Domini by Emperor Theodosius I as part of his campaign against pagan practices. The Mulias Preparatrices Guild was disbanded. The practice was declared barbaric. But here's the thing about systematic oppression. You can abolish the ceremony. You can disband the guild. You can condemn the practice. But if you do not change the underlying belief that women's bodies exist for male authority, that wives owe absolute submission, that breaking resistance is necessary.